Welcome to The Perspective with Blake and Leezy. Today we delve into the topic of family and how youth interact therein. Today we will be joined by our guest speakers, Miss Verlie Rebecca
and Fredrico Lord. The conversations that we have had with them have been extremely wholesome and informative, and we are so grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak with them from this platform. And so we will be delving into that today. And before we start, Blake, would you like to define what the family is?
Yeah, so before we can talk about it, we must understand what the family is. Now, the family is described as being the base unit of society. So what this means is that everything in society is based off the family. It's basically a foundational unit. So that means the values of the family, the core traditions of the family, that is what society is based off of. And that's why it's so important that we start with this topic.
Yes, and we do need to realize that the family impacts all of the rest of the spheres of influence that we will be covering in this season of The Perspective. And so, without further ado, we're gonna bring Verlie Rebecca online, and I had the privilege of having this interview with her. And so, if you do not know, Verlie Rebecca has a passion for children and youth development in Belize. And over the years, she has hosted seminars, written curriculums, led youth ministry, and taught at the primary and high school level. She has traveled across the country conducting sensitization training, focusing on issues affecting women and children in Belize. Verlie holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Guidance and Counseling and an Associate's degree in Arts and Leadership. She is the co-founder of Girls Connect and is currently pursuing her master's degree in counseling psychology, basically focusing on family and marriage therapy in Jamaica. She hopes to return home within the next 2 years and use her skills and expertise to help advance the field of mental health in Belize. And so we will go right over to the interview with Verlie. Well, so today we're going to be interviewing you on what you believe is the structure of the family and the place that the family has within society. Our main theme for our podcast today is the family, so we only saw it right that we brought someone that knew much about it to bring them on. So the first question that we have for today is, how important do you think is the family structure?
The family, for me, I believe that the family is the most important structure in society. And why are they so important? Because the family is responsible for instilling values into children or into a child. And without the family or without a proper family unit within society, we are faced with what we are faced with today. And when I say a proper family unit, Jalisa, I am talking about a family, not necessarily a mother and a father or grandparents and all of that, but I am talking about a family that understands their role in society. The family has lost its place. And the reason I say that is because when we look at the prison system, when we look at crime and violence, and all of those things are at an all-time high, I believe that the family unit is responsible for what the breaking down of what is going on in our society. Because if it is that they are the most important and they are supposed to be instilling values into children, then those things are not happening. Because when we look at what is going on today, I often recall when my grandparents and my parents used to talk about back then when the family structure was one that looked out for each other. We're talking about being able to sleep with your door open. You're talking about the little things like passing somebody on the streets and saying good morning. We're talking about yes ma'am, no ma'am. Those things no happen, and it leads to children being disrespectful. It leads to the breaking down of of the family and what we see now, especially with the prison system and the crime and violence. So I believe that the family is important, and if the family does what they're supposed to, then we're going to see what the intended purpose was for families in the first place.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. And I do appreciate that you brought up the notion of the intended purpose, which leads us into our second question for today. Do you believe that a child is a product of nature or nurture?
Um, let's first define those two terms. When we're thinking about nature, we're talking about genetic inheritance, right? We're talking about biological factors that are passed down to that child. When we look at nurture, we're talking about external, outside influences, the environment, experiences, and what they're exposed to. I strongly believe that both nurture and nature affects child development because the family passed down values to us and the ways of doing things. We often hear people say, some mothers do it, some here do it right. So they're doing that because that has been passed down to them. There are certain genetic factors that are passed down to us. But we also see, for instances, when a child leave the nest, when a child goes to school and they are socializing with their peers and outside with society, as well as music and movies, those things also influence persons. When we see those big time artists coming up and talking and dressing and the way they talk and all of that, we see our children, we see our young people doing mimicking what they're doing. And so I take my own life for example sometimes. When I was growing up, there are certain values that are passed on to me. Like I do not ever respond to an adult by just saying yes or no. For me, it's always yes sir, no sir, yes mom, no mom. That was passed on to me. My parents taught me those morals, right? And then when I left home, there are certain things as well that my parents taught me that I realized, you can do it like that outside of the home. So it's both nature and nurture because both of them play a key role in your entire development. Now you could negatively take on both of them or you can positively take on both of them. But at the end of the day, we are products of both nature and nurture.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that. And earlier you mentioned the influence of your grandparents and what they had told you. So that leads me to ask, how have you seen parenting transform from when you were growing up as opposed to the kids that are being raised today?
Kids like you.
Exactly.
Teasing. So parenting style for me again, I say for me because persons might have their different what they're different what how they see things differently, right? And so parenting style has changed over the years or over the course of the years because we now have children raising children, and those children may not fully understand the developmental process or the proper way to raise children. Not saying that our grandparents did as well, but in our society today, when we look at it, raising children and being a parent is more than providing food, shelter, and clothing. It is about understanding the child developmental stages and how that child changes over time. And so when we look at the parenting style today, we see parents drinking with their children. We see parents, it's all about selfies and posting their child. Oh, you only pretty. Oh, you look goody. Allowing children to be in relationships at early age, not teaching them respect and manners. As a matter of fact, this young generation of parents, you talk to them picnic bad and them a cuss you off right in front of the child. And they take everything that their children say at face value without even teaching them respect or the different mannerisms that are out there. Back then, we had parents who understood how important it was for their child to fit in society, but who also, but that their children also understood the importance of work ethic, understood the values of life, understood the fearing of God, respecting adults and those persons outside of the home. And back then, Jaliza, people often talk about how children respected the community because everybody was responsible for how that child was raised. Parents nowadays don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that you corrected and you disciplined their child because they're coming after you. So, those are some of the factors that have affected how children are being raised today. The mere fact that too many of our girls are having children at an early age, 15. That's 15 is an age where you are just understanding development yourself. And now for you to bring a child into the world and raise that child you do not completely understand the entire structure that plays into raising children. No, I am, and I want to make this clear that I am not saying um that children having children that they, oh, I'm calling this a big issue and stuff. I am just saying how it affects persons at that level.
Okay, yes, that's an excellent point that you brought up there. And so we'll just shift gears slightly. And the question that I have, there's a common term that we use, and it's called it, and it's usually said that it takes a community to raise a child. Would you agree with that statement, or do you disagree?
And it goes back to my saying that back then when parents used to talk about how persons outside of the home could discipline children. Community, Jal, is not just a single person. Community is an entire system. The community is made up of the church. The community is made up of schools. It's made up of the work and the business places. Every single person in the community has a role to play. I go to church and I am being disrespectful and rude. Somebody must correct me. They don't let me be rude and disrespectful. I go to school. The teacher then is responsible for me. So the teacher has the authority and the power to correct me and discipline me so that I should and know what to do or what is right or what is wrong. I am at the bus stop. I am vandalizing the place. Somebody sees me that is older than I. They should have the power and the authority to correct me and say, hey, where did that for? So the community really is responsible for raising children. If we turn a blind eye to everything that persons do outside of the home, then we are condoning persons in their wrong. So yes, the community is responsible for the raising of children. If every single one of us or play our part in the school, in the church, in the business place, at the market, we would have had better families, better children.
Yes, that makes all the more sense when you put it in that way. And so now the final question that we have today, and this is a question that I think that has been resonating with us for a while now. And growing up, me becoming an adult, adulting and doing all of this, I've realized that this is something that we do not talk about that much. And so I would like you to elaborate on how important you think it is for adults to heal their inner child.
We we hear the term used, um hurt people. Everybody know that term. But what does it really mean? It really means that if I have not learned how to deal with my pain, the pain that have been inflicted on me, then I am going to go through life in broken pieces, trying to figure out things. And the same thing that they did to me, I might end up doing to others. Take, for example, a mother has a child. When she was growing up, her mother often yelled and beat her for every little thing. That mother now, that child that turned a mother, will in turn yell and scream and beat her child because that was what they did. Now, that mother did not heal from the brokenness and the rejection that they suffered from the mother, so they now begin to pass it down. In counseling, I have learned that as a counselor, if I do not understand how to deal with my own emotions, then nobody can trust me with theirs. So the healing process begins then when I can fully understand one and accept two, that I am a broken person, that all of us come with flaws, all of us come with a past. Some of our past might be worse than others, but we all come with some sort of hurt. If I cannot deal with the rejection, if I cannot deal with the abuse, if I cannot deal with the unforgiveness and the bitterness inside of me, then I will forever pass that on to my children, to others that I meet, to those in society on a whole. So we must learn, and this is an issue that affects every single one of us. We must learn to deal with our inner child, and we must not be afraid to ask ourselves the questions: what am I hiding from? Who is it that hurt me in my past, and how do I get over that hurt? Who is it that I wish could have been there for me and they were not there? Why did my mother leave? Why did my father leave? Those, Jaliza, are questions that we must, and they are hard questions. They are questions that will bring tears to our eyes and cause resentment and unforgiveness and bitterness to rise up inside of us. But we have to get the healing that we need in order to be successful. When I put my head on the pillow at night to sleep, I don't want to be worrying about what happened to me when I was 5 years old, when I was 10 years old. My inner child must heal once I am going to live a fruitful adult life. And anything that we cover up, anything that we put a little cloth over, always come back up to bite us. So then we must learn to deal with it. And how do we do that? How do we deal with the things that hurt us as in our inner childhood days? We talk about it. We share it. Excuse me. I know that persons say that going to counseling and mental health and psychiatrists and all of them something. Man, do it, heal yourself. Well, that might be possible. At the end of the day, for us to truly get the healing, and even now, as a graduate student in counseling, having studied counseling for the past 7 years, there are issues that I am still dealing with that happened to me in my inner childhood days. And even if the professional like me have not dealt with everything as yet, I am saying that we've got to heal our inner self, not by ourselves, but bringing accountability alongside us. So that when we cross the bridge into adulthood, when we begin to have children, when we begin to be a grandparent, when we begin to be a mentor, that we would have been healed from those things. What we fail to deal with is going to come back and bite us.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Verlie. This was an extremely wholesome conversation. I appreciate being able to speak to you on these levels. But before we do leave for today and we ask you to step aside, we just want you to leave us with one final word or phrase or something that you would like to say before you leave.
The family have not lost its place in society. I think if all of us begin to do our part from where we are now, we can bring back a family unit that would change the entire social structure of our country. And so, to those of you that are listening, do not be afraid to step out, to do your part. It takes all of us to do something. And don't forget to ensure that when you are doing and all that you are saying, that you always have somebody else in mind. Because we can't be selfish with what we have and what we do. We must be able to pass on that so that the next generation will understand the right morals and the values, so that the Leesians, all of us can live and love and appreciate. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you. It was a pleasure sharing my knowledge on topics that was discussed.
All right. Thank you, Verles.
So thank you for your insights, Miss Verlie. So we understand from what we have just been told that there are three aspects in which youth partake with the family. This is how youth are affected by the family, how youth affect the family back, and how the youth can positively affect the family. So we're going to first dive into how the youth are affected by the family.
Okay, well, like Blake mentioned, we are going to be discussing briefly about how youth can be affected by the family, both negatively and positively. We see that the truth is that we cannot say that a child is a product of where they come from. Maybe there was a time that we could have been able to say that, but we have seen statistics that have proven that young people that have come from a hard background have managed to flip the script in their life. So it is no longer an excuse that because I came from a rough situation that this is why I am who I am. There comes an age where I believe that you need to take responsibility for your life and you need to take responsibility for your actions, because you cannot continue playing the blame game. But the truth is that a lot of us are dysfunctioning adults. I am recently adulting, guys. It was a trap. And the truth is that I realized that a lot of the things that you have been through, like we mentioned in the interview with Miss Verlie, that you need to heal your inner child. It is so important that as an adult and as a young adult and as a teenager, you learn that you need to heal your inner child, because if you do not heal what is within, you will hurt all the people that surround you, and you will hurt all the people that you come in contact with.
Indeed. In our society, we see a sad cycle where people who came from broken families and from disadvantaged households, they suffered from a lack of some of the advantages that other families had. And yet we've seen some powerful people come out of these families. They've been able to flip the script through powerful self-motivation. Now, the family doesn't necessarily just drag you down or anything like that. The reason the family exists as a unit is because of its advantages. Now, the family, whether your family is only a single parent family due to unfortunate circumstances or without, we also have extended families. We have children-only families. We have families that may have been broken or harmed in any way. But a family can still be a strong and powerful unit regardless of the disadvantages that it has been through. We've seen youth who come from extended families who learn the wisdom of their grandparents and understand the mistakes of generations before. We can see many instances where the family is the most powerful unit in society, and that is because it is a foundational principle. So understanding our families and becoming active members of them, that's why it's so important. It's because of how foundational and important they are to society.
Yes, and just shifting gears a little bit, like sometimes your family is not necessarily the people who are related to you by blood. And that's why I firmly believe that it takes a community to raise a child. I am who I am because someone dared to believe in me. And I feel like I've seen it in my own life that as I'm getting older, I feel the need to give back and invest in the lives of others because someone dared to invest in my life. And I think that that's a place where we need to get as young people, that we realize that, you know what, we are not the final destination, that whatever they impart into us, we need to go and impart into someone else. And that goes back to the entire ideology that I am my brother's keeper. The truth is, guys, we cannot be selfish. We need to care for those around us.
Yes, humans are social beings. If our society isn't helping raise us in a positive manner, then our society will come to ruin. And we've seen this in many cases. So our second point here is how, playing on that exact same note, is how youth affects society back. Now this is something we don't actually talk about a lot. We talk about how youth are disadvantaged by society and family and stuff like this, but youth can also affect the family in positive and negative ways.
Yes, that is very true. And the truth is that when you're young, you think you know it all, but the truth is that you're very far off. Like, looking back, I wish that I had listened to my elders when I was younger. It would have saved me a lot of pain. And I feel like when you're young, you think that, you know, they can't tell me nothing, he can't tell me nothing, who he think he'd talk to. But the truth is that a lot of older people, guys, they have a lot of wisdom when they try impart into your life because they care about you. The truth is that they have walked there before, they have been through it. And as a young person, I know it's hard because your ego quite puffed up. But you need to understand sometimes that that same ego and that same, you know, the same kind of pride that you're trying to hold on to will be the thing that will be very detrimental to you in life.
Yes, and with that said, youth can also be a massive positive influence as well. So youth can take their energy, their enthusiasm, and their drive, and they can impact society in a positive way. We see this with many youth activists who work to save the environment, our families, and our homes. So we understand that while there are positive and negative ways in which youth can affect the family, it is very important for us youth to find our place and to understand that our drive and our motivation should ultimately help us in a positive way with our families.
Yes, and just to piggyback off of what Blake is saying, in terms of positive impact, I think that as a young person, I wish that I knew the value of living a life of service, because when you're young, you have energy, you have ideas, and you have time. Because the truth is that that is one of the things that you lose as you get older, time. And I think that's why in the Bible it speaks about serving the Lord in the days of your youth. Because the truth is, that's when you have time, that's when you have ideas, that's when you can work through a lot, and that's when people are more forgiving of your mistakes that you make. As you get older, the world will not be so forgiving. And so take advantage of the time that you have when you are young. And our final point that we want to discuss today between Blake and I will be
Basically, how youth can strive to positively affect the family and thereby also society. So this is something that we also don't talk very much about, is that youth have a massive impact, a massive voice, and sometimes we don't talk about this, is that youth, their impact is so significant. If you were paying attention to the recent election, you'll note that on some of these politicians' tracks, they had things where they were talking about the youth voice, poet laureates. We were talking about powerful ways in which the youth could interact with society and thereby also the family. So we understand that while youth may not understand all things, will not know all things, that we still have a powerful drive and a powerful intellect that is God-given and is basically our guiding light. We have to be able to understand what our society is, what our family is, and how we can influence them positively.
yes, and I believe that if you choose to have a family, that one of your mandates should be that you will give your children a life that they do not need to heal from. The truth is that you need to heal as a person before you can basically give to your kids the life that you never had. And I think about my own life. It's like I come from a family whereby my parents gave me the life that they never had. And I know a lot of stories that parents said, you know what, I tried my best with my child because I did not have. And so I wanted to give them what I didn't have. But the truth is that what's the point of materialistic things, and what's the point of, basically you have food, you have shelter, if you don't have the emotional support? And so I think that's something that if you want to be a parent, you really need to focus on that. You really need to look at, how can I emotionally support my child? How can I ensure that I aid them in their proper development?
Right, absolutely. And we understand that this is more difficult from somebody coming from a harsh background or disadvantaged family. So we see the need to flip the script. And for more on that, we bring Mr. Fredrico Lord.
Yes, and we just thank him for joining us today, for taking time with us. This is a segment that we will be including within our podcast. It will be called the Tell Your Story, this Tell Your Story segment. And so we thank you so much, Fredrico. And so let's head over there.
Okay, so thank you for joining us today, Fredrico. And
It's a pleasure.
we're glad to have you here. So the first question that we want to ask you rather, would be, what does the term flipping the script mean to you?
Flipping the script sounds like a millennial phrase. Um it sounds like people who are ready for a change, people who are ready to be unorthodox, and not in a bad way, but to evoke or to be a part of a change for a greater good. Going against the tides or going against the grain is what comes to mind when I hear flipping the script.
Okay. And so what does it take? What does it take to affect that change, to flip the script?
Well, first of all, I think it takes willpower, and you have to want the change. And when I say want the change, I don't mean desire it in your head and saying I want a change. You want something that far surpasses that. You have to be tired of what the status quo is if you're going to flip the script or make the change. You need to have that what I call a bulldog tenacity in order to flip the script. And what I mean by a bulldog tenacity is that a mongrel or a pot liquor dog, you know, if you attempt at him, no matter how hard he's coming, chances are most of the time he's gonna turn back. A bulldog, a trained dog, trained to attack, he's not gonna turn back no matter how you try to intimidate him. At the command, he's gonna go. So a bulldog tenacity is one that is not phased.
Okay, so this kind of attitude, this kind of tenacity, as you're saying, we're specifically talking today about family and how we can take experiences from our life, and we might not necessarily come from an advantaged background, but how can we flip the script on our life? We might be going somewhere unfortunate, our family structure might be breaking down, and we might be coming from a very unfortunate place. How can we flip the script to make it to a more prosperous future?
Okay, I think given the background that you described from our families, that should be enough a drive, and I am a testament of that. Maybe that's why I'm here answering these questions. I came from a background that was not the best, and it wasn't even average. I came from an extremely broken family setting in terms of lack of love. There was hostility, there was violence, there was hatred, there were fights, there were factions and disputes. And I think what fueled me the most is not wanting to perpetuate that in my life and the family that I intend to have. So I used the broken things that I went through, the hurtful situations, as a pivot and a platform for me to make a change for my life. I told myself, I don't want to raise a family that's going to be like the family that I had.
Powerful, powerful message. So you took drive and you took consistency and you saw how you could make a better life and you put it together for a better future. Is this how you flip the script?
Right, exactly. That's what I did.
Okay, Fred, well, to leave for your final words, what would be something that you would want to tell the people listening about this topic, about flipping the script and not allowing your family situation to cripple you in life?
I believe I want to encourage persons who are listening to me that, you know, anybody can make a change. And I want persons to know that change doesn't come, when one writer puts it this way, change doesn't come in centimeters, they come in millimeters. And for the persons who are not necessarily mathematically inclined, a millimeter is much smaller than a centimeter. And you don't have to expect that change is going to come into big steps. It starts, as I said, with a mindset, you know, being uncomfortable with where you are, what you've been through, what you've seen to be the norm, and making up in your mind that I can make a difference. You don't need an audience. You don't need a crowd behind you to stimulate and cause this change that we're talking about. You need the willpower, the determination, and the drive to know that you are in your own lane. You're not in a race against somebody else. You were given this shot at life. You're listening to me right now because you have been given purpose. And I believe the purpose in this generation, in this season, and in this time, it's time for us to go against the wind. It's time for us to flip the script. It's time for us to do something different. We've been doing it one way and getting the same results. It's time to do it different, where we're going to yield better results. And I want you to know that you have been empowered to do so. You were created with the ability to be a catalyst. Do not sit on it. Do not let doubt. Do not let what person said to you. And if I had done that, I wouldn't have been in the position to share with you. Do not let what others say, feel, or even think about you, or what you think about yourself sometimes to stop you, because sometimes we can be our own hindrances. Believe in yourself. Believe in who God created you to be, and go out and be the difference, the change that the world needs.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Fred. We really appreciate this interview, and thank you for sharing parts of your story with us. It has been a privilege talking to you, and thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much for having me, and you take care.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.
Wow, that's a powerful message, Fredrico. Thank you for your time, and thank you for doing that interview for us. So now, reflecting back on our day, we want to give our mission motivation. And what we can see quite clearly is that, especially if you're from a disadvantaged background, self-motivation, drive, tenacity, as Mr. Fred was saying. That is a powerful, powerful thing, and is very, very important for young youth.
And so today, the quote that we will be left with is from Michelle Ruiz, and it says, if people are doubting how far you can go, go so far that you can't hear them anymore.
Oh, that is a simple but also so clear quote. We must understand that we can go very, very far. Our self-motivation knows no bounds. If we can master it and proclaim dominance over it, then we can go so far in this life.
So thank you guys so much for joining us on the family episode of The Perspective, and we look forward to talking with you next week. So tune in, share, like, we're out.